Hello, welcome to the show. Welcome to Not Just Nintendo, a video game podcast that is about Nintendo. But it's not just Nintendo here at Not Just Nintendo, as I talk about other video games and other video game companies as well. Welcome back, everyone. This week to episode 35. I'll start off by saying I apologize that this is coming out a little bit later. I'm not entirely sure if I'll get this out late Tuesday night or if it won't be till Wednesday. So I apologize about that. I know, I like to say that the schedule is on Tuesday, but obviously, as we've seen quite a few times, sometimes every now and then it'll get pushed back to Wednesday. So, I don't know. I don't think it's like there's like a ton of people that are going to be too upset if they have to wait an extra day. So it's not really a huge deal. But yeah, basically, the podcast could end up being on Wednesdays some week, I apologize, but it just depends on really, honestly, what it is most of the time is me trying to beat something last minute to hopefully talk about it on the podcast. And then, I end up spending too long and end up putting things off too long. Or other times I have things actually come up. And so, it just depends on the week. This is, of course, episode 35. I don't know if I already said that or not. But yeah, 35, right? That's kind of a cool number, right? It's halfway between two even tens. I swear, I come up with some reason to think it's a cool number literally every single week. Let's say, so this was 35. 34, I said it was over a third of the way to 100. 33, I said it was just about a third of the way to 100. 32, I said it was half of a Minecraft stack. I don't know what I said about 31. Obviously, 30, I was probably like, oh, it's an even 10 or whatever. 29, I probably just said that the next one was an even 10. As you can see, I do that kind of thing a lot. I do the exact same thing all the time. I try to correlate the number of the episode with some important thing in a game or just in life in general. I feel like that's gonna stop working out very well after like 100 or something. It's gonna be harder to do. And of course, every single time there's like 22 or 33 or those ones as well. The palindromes, got to talk about those. But 35. Not one of those, but it is still a cool number, right? In a way, it's kind of neat. We're halfway to 70, right? Yeah, today's episode, this is one of the last episodes of the year, as it turns out. The next episode is going to be the December 17th, 16th. December 16th, and then the 23rd, and then the 30th should be the next one. Now, I will be out of town after Christmas. So I'm not entirely sure how, because there's a 30th and then January 6th should be when we come back. So I'm not yet sure how that's going to work out as far as the podcast. I imagine one of those two episodes, either December 30th or January 6th, I'll probably miss. I don't know which one yet. Probably December 30th, I'll probably elect to miss. And then I'll just pre-record the episode for January 6th, like way early. And that'll be like my predictions for Nintendo for the year 2026. That's probably what I'll do. We'll see. Don't take that as truth, but that's my plan as of right now. That's kind of what I'm hoping to do. Obviously, things are, I guess, kind of busy at the end of the year here, although, to be fair, not as busy as last year, because I've not really been live streaming or any of that stuff. It's been a busy year. Been doing a lot of practicing and stuff of my musical instruments and things like that, and so it's taken time away from making videos and stuff. But I am going to do my end-of-the-year ranking video like I did last year. It's going to be a very similar video to that video, or if you watch the top 50 video, it'll be pretty similar to that. I think my final count is 40 games. I managed to get it to 40. That is having to count the Last of Us Left Behind, which is like some people would consider it a DLC. I would say it is kind of its own standalone thing. It was released originally as a standalone thing, but it was also kind of tied to the original Last of Us, so it kind of depends on how you count it. I'm going to consider it its own game, just mainly for the sake of getting 40 games this year. But look, I mean, if you don't want to count it, you don't want to count it. It's what it is. It's whatever. It's not really the end of the world. But I'm going to call it 40 with that, and that's going to be that. So that's going to be my big end of the year video. I was thinking of maybe trying to do a video recapping the Game Awards as well. After that happens, we'll see what happens with that. It's really going to come down to whether or not I have time to get it out in a reasonable span of time, despite the fact that I'm trying to do the top 50 videos, or not top 50, but the I guess top 40, but the ranking video as well. And I might even do another video where I just talk about my top 10 for the year. That includes old games and new games. And that's mainly just because I would like to be able to go into a little bit more depth on those last 10 games without making the video, like, ridiculously long. Last year's video was an hour. The top 50 video was over an hour. It was like an hour 15. And those are very long videos, and there were multiple people that told me that, they didn't want to watch the whole video, or they thought the video was too long or too drawn out or something. Even though I feel like I was moving pretty quick from game to game, there's just a lot of games to talk about. And so I think putting the top 10 as its own video as well, where I go into more depth, might be a good idea. So that, again, is going to come down to whether or not I have time to do that. The number one thing is my end-of-year ranking. If I can get that out, and I can still get out some of these other things, then great. But otherwise, then they'll not go out. I mean, that's just how it'll go, right? So we'll see how that all works. Obviously, over Christmas break from school, like I said, I'll be out of town, but I will probably be playing a lot of stuff on the Switch, maybe a couple things on the 3DS, we'll see, I don't know. I don't think I've talked about it on the show. I guess I can talk about it just a little bit right now. Well, you know what? No, I'll make you wait. I'm going to talk about it in the second half of the show. Basically, the general layout for the show, I guess I should probably at least introduce that. We're already 7 minutes in. But the general layout for the show, I'm actually going to talk about news stuff earlier. I'm going to talk about the news stuff right now first. Actually, I'll probably yap for a few more minutes, but then I'll talk about the news stuff. And then after the news stuff, I'll talk about games I played. So we're doing it backwards this time with no break, because there's no... we can't do music anymore on the show. For those who don't know, Spotify has been flagging all sorts of things that use music from video games, so I'm not using music from video games anymore. I'm going to try to compose my own music, hopefully before too long. I just got to get around to actually doing it, honestly. And obviously it's not the kind of thing you can just quickly whip up in an afternoon. I got to really think about it. But yeah, I was thinking about just composing my own to use for the show, so that might happen at some point, but if so, it could be months before I ever get around to actually doing that, because I'm a busy guy, and also I'm not a busy guy, and I'm lazy, but I'm also a busy guy, so it just depends on the day, right? But anyways, so my point is we're doing the show backwards, mostly for the reason that the second half of the show with the games I've been playing is mostly going to focus on Yakuza Kiwami, and I want to talk about some non-spoiler things for Kiwami, but I also want to talk about spoiler things for Kiwami. And I definitely don't want to, be talking about spoilers and have people around that, are going to play the game or don't want stuff spoiled. So I'm going to give, a timestamp or whatever. Or, honestly, I won't even get a timestamp. I'll probably just, end off the show and then talk about Kiwami afterwards. So I'll say, okay, here's the point where we're done with the main show. Everything after that is going to be talking about spoilers for Kiwami. That's, I think, what we're going to do here. So stay tuned for that. And if you don't care about spoilers for Kiwami, or you've already played it, or, something like that, then you can stick around. That's fine. So that's what's going to happen with that. So first we will talk about the news things. But actually, first, I really suck at this. If you guys haven't noticed, I really suck at this. I'm trying my best here, but I'm not very good. What I was talking about before with the whole over the break thing. So obviously, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be working on this video. My plan is to get it out on December 19th. It might have to go out on the December 26th instead. Tomorrow, if this is coming out on Wednesday, I believe it probably is at this point, but it might be late Tuesday night. But either way, on Thursday, the Game Awards show is happening. Now, the Game Awards, I'm pretty sure, I'm actually checking right now as we speak. I'm pretty sure the Game Awards show is at 7:30, but I'm assuming that the pre-show is probably going to be at 7 then, in that case. So obviously, I'll definitely, check that out and confirm that. It looks like... yeah, they say on their site 7:30, but again, I don't know, maybe the pre-show is going to be at 7, so I'll definitely try to look at that first. So if the pre-show is at 7:30, then I'll probably start the live stream around 7. If the pre-show is at 7, I'll probably start it around 6:45 or something, somewhere in that general area. And as long as nothing comes up, that's the plan for the Game Awards show. And I'm hoping to live stream it on the channel for those who haven't heard. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or iHeartRadio or Amazon Music, one of those places, then definitely be sure to check out my YouTube channel. That's in the description. And you can watch my live streamed reaction to the Game Awards over there. I'm going to be talking about, obviously, all of the awards, all the announcements and stuff. I'm going to be watching the whole thing through. It's probably gonna be like a 3.5 hour show or something. So, we'll be in it for the long haul. So if you want to head over there, then you can. That's great. Obviously, most of you guys are probably already on YouTube as well, so you can just see it there. But I guess that's probably all I had to say about that. Over the holiday break, if I can ever actually get back to my point, because I keep getting away from it, I'm going to probably be playing a lot of different things. Obviously, I'll probably get some things for Christmas, and I'll be playing those after Christmas time on the go, because we'll be traveling. And so I imagine it's going to be a lot of portable Switch 2 playing for me. So anything that I get on like PS5, I'm probably going to be away from until January, when school starts back up too. So I probably won't be sinking my teeth into any big PlayStation stuff until later on in January. But right there at the end of December and the beginning of January, I'll probably be playing a lot of Switch 2 things. And that's the plan, right? So we'll see exactly what happens. Obviously, I can't predict these things, but that's probably what's going to happen. And who knows? Maybe I'll come back, because the first show of the year will be January 6th, but I'll have recorded that far in advance. So January 13th is when I'll properly be back. And I imagine I'll probably have a lot to talk about on January 13th, because it'll have been a while, especially if I miss December 30th and pre-record January 6th. Then it'll end up being almost a month. So I'll have a lot to say. So stay tuned for that. I guess now, without any further delay, we should probably talk about news. I did pull up a bunch of things here for news today. I don't know if I'll go through them all, but we'll just get started. All right, Assassin's Creed Shadows, right? Obviously, that got ported over to the Switch 2. I think that was last week that came out. One of the big things about Assassin's Creed Shadows, for those who don't know, that game came out early this year. I want to say it was like March or April or something. And now it just came out on Switch 2 just this month. But it's been out for a little while. And one of the big points of the game, it's set in Japan. One of the big things in the game is that you play as two different protagonists. It's a dual protagonist setup. Yasuke and Naoe, I don't know how to say that. But anyways, there's the two different protagonists. So the director of Assassin's Creed Shadows, Simon LeMay Commodus, or Comtois, I don't know how to say that, honestly. I don't feel like I've heard that name, which is weird, because I feel like I should have heard that name. But anyway, he, I guess, said in an interview that I think the learning for us is that, yes, we could do more dual protagonist games in the future if we have a good reason to do it narratively and for the setting. So, I mean, that might be corporate talk, but maybe also that's implying that future Assassin's Creed games could potentially be dual protagonists, which is interesting, right? Obviously, I'm coming at it from the lens of somebody who's only played through the first Assassin's Creed game and quite a bit of the second one, but I didn't beat it. I will be back to that next year for sure. I'll definitely restart that next year and beat it that time. But anyway, so as somebody who's only played the beginnings of the Assassin's Creed series, it seems really weird to me having two protagonists. I'm like, how would that even work, right? With the whole idea that you're reborn into the body of your ancestor. I don't even know how that would translate. Obviously, that's because I'm not aware of the things in the more recent games, so I'm kind of out of the loop there. But it's definitely interesting to me, intriguing, I guess I could say. I'm definitely curious when I get to Assassin's Creed Shadows to see what that's like, and I'll play it at some point for sure. I don't know if I'll play it on Switch 2. We'll see. It could be years, though, honestly, before I get through the Assassin's Creed series, because it's very long. Obviously, there's a lot of games, and my plan is to play them all. We'll see how that works out, but who knows, right? All right, so PS5, they won. PlayStation won. It's official. They've won. So the holiday sales, or I should say, actually, Black Friday sales, right? Obviously, the holiday sales aren't over. In the U.S. markets for Black Friday, supposedly the PS5, the different variants of it, made up 47% of total Black Friday, the Black Friday week hardware sales. The Switch 2 only sold 24%, and the NEX Playground or Next Playground. I've actually seen that thing. I don't know if has anybody else seen that? Like I saw it at Walmart months ago. The playground. It's basically a Connect, right? So you like wave your arms and you can play Fruit Ninja and that kind of thing, and it works decently well. I played a demo for a few different things. The problem is I don't feel like that technology is particularly astounding. Like it's not anything too crazy, obviously, right? Like it was crazy when the Wii came out. It was crazy when the Xbox 360 Connect came out. I guess, if you want to go further back, you could say with the iToy, right? That was probably the first instance of that. I guess you could kind of think about it with things like the Power Glove all the way back on the NES, but really that technology that we see in something like the Playground really kind of started with the iToy on the PS2. But either way, right, it was novel back then on the PS2, and it was still novel on the Wii and on the Xbox 360 Connect. I would say in 2025, I'm not sure that idea is quite so novel, especially when pretty much all the games you can play on it are just like mobile games that are ported. And obviously, I mean, I'm not saying they're poorly ported, but when you don't have like real traditional video games that are coded for something like this, it doesn't really, I don't think it's all that appealing. But regardless, the Playground supposedly took 14% of Black Friday week hardware unit sales. I think it's pretty cheap too, though. I think it's like $200 or something. So it's pretty cheap. It's a novel idea. I think a lot of kids would be into it. So that's probably a lot of why it did so well. And yeah, that was Matt Piscatella from Circana. In the UK, though, we have even better numbers. The PS5 dominated 62% of console sales. The Switch 2 made up 23%, and Xbox made up 10%. So things look a little bit, more clear in the UK, seeing how horribly Xbox did and how incredibly the PS5 did. Honestly, I would have expected the Switch 2 to do a little bit better this Black Friday. Honestly, I kind of figured it would be the number one thing, with the PS5 being second. I was really thinking that it was going to be huge. I was really curious to hear about the Black Friday sales myself because, like I said, I expected big things for the Switch 2. I'm guessing the reason why it didn't do quite so well, and maybe it still did well, maybe it was just that the PS5 did so well. I imagine the primary reason why the Switch 2 didn't do so well is because it really doesn't have all that big of a game library at this point. Had nobody bought the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 had been backwards compatible with the Switch 1, then I think a lot of people would have still bought the Switch 2 because, oh look, I can play all these games that I haven't played in all these 8 years. But because everybody bought the Switch 1, there really hasn't been a lot that's come out on the Switch 2 that's been, like, exclusive, right? You've had Mario Kart World was exclusive, which is definitely, like, something a lot of people want to play, but I don't think it's really a system seller. Donkey Kong Bonanza could potentially be a system seller, depending on who you are. But then, other than that, it's a lot of, like, Switch 2 editions, right? Metroid Prime 4, you can play on Switch 1. And that's, like, apparently it runs pretty well on Switch 1, as everybody's saying. Pokemon Legends ZA, right? You could play that on the Switch 1. I don't think that one runs quite as well on Switch 1, but you can play it, technically, right? If people could play Scarlet and Violet on the Switch 1, I think they could play anything on Switch 1. So you see what I'm saying, though, right? A lot of these games were playable on Switch 1. So I think for the average, like, general consumer that's not, like, a crazy hardcore Nintendo fan like anybody listening to this podcast, or at least a big video game fan like anybody listening to this podcast, for those normal people, the normies, it doesn't really make a ton of sense, I don't think, to get a Switch 2 year one. And that's okay. I think it's fine as long, if they get it in a couple years' time. I hope that eventually everybody has a Switch 2, right? Everybody in the entire world will sell 8 billion of the things. But obviously, realistically, I don't think the Switch 2 is going to do nearly as well as the Switch 1. I hope it still does really well. That's the plan, obviously. I say the plan like I'm on the board of Nintendo or something, but obviously I would love for the Switch 2 to do really well. I'd love for Nintendo to be doing really well. I don't really expect crazy big things when we've had such a quiet year for exclusives, right? Now, for games in general, I think 2025 has been decent for Nintendo. Not quite as huge as I was expecting it to be honest, but it is still pretty big. But as far as, like, exclusive things, it's not quite as big, because a big game like Metroid Prime 4, which I actually didn't even mention. I probably should have mentioned that game, but that came out last week as well, on the 4th. Metroid Prime 4, we'll probably touch a little bit more on that a little bit later. But yeah, that came out, and, obviously that's a big title. That's, right up there with Mario Kart World and Bonanza for the hardcore, right? Maybe for the casual people it's a little bit lower, but still a pretty big title, I would say. Oh, actually, the next thing I pulled up was Prime 4. Okay, so I guess I'll talk about this right now then. Metroid Prime 4, this was big news, I think a couple weeks ago. I don't think I ever touched on it. I think it happened, like, the news came out pretty much right after one of my episodes came out, and so it wasn't really, like, I couldn't cover it. I could have covered it, like, a week later, but it wasn't really on the front of my mind or on the front of anybody's mind, really. Metroid Prime 4 was doing really bad as far as reviews went. Um, Before the thing came out on Metacritic, it had like 84. I believe was the critic score was an 84, and like 84, obviously not terrible. It's not, completely pitiful, but it's not also like incredible by any means, right? Like you look at an 84, you're like, oh, like this isn't really as big as I was hoping. And I know a lot of people were obviously very excited for Metroid Prime 4. It's probably one of the most anticipated games, likely of all time, but definitely of the last decade. It's been in the works for so many years and announced for so many years, and then announced again for so many years, and then we heard so little about it for so many years, and it was just like Silksong, right? Metroid Prime 4 and Silksong were like two games that we've been hearing about but not hearing about for years, like from the company we hear nothing, and then from fans it's like all we hear about, those two games. And I think both of the games didn't hit quite as hard as they originally seemed like they were going to. Obviously, I think most people liked Silksong, but I don't think Silksong was quite as explosive as it seemed like it was going to be. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just in the circles I listen to. Maybe we'll watch the Game Awards tomorrow and Silksong will win, and I'll be like, wow, okay, I didn't expect that, right? But I'm guessing that Silksong is going to be a little bit of a, like, I don't think it's going to win anything. Or maybe not anything, but I don't think it's going to win. It's at least not going to win Game of the Year, I don't think. I think like something like Clair Obscur has a much better shot at something like that. I don't think Silksong is quite as much of a consideration as I would have expected before it came out, right? Like, if you told me in January that Silksong was going to come out this year, I would have been like, oh, shoot, that could win Game of the Year, like, potentially, right? But at this point, in December, I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year. So, I mean, who knows? We'll see. Maybe I shouldn't be making any bold speculations like that the day before the Game Awards. All right, so the Metascore now, I have it pulled up right now, Metroid Prime 4. The Metascore now for critics is down to an 80. So now that the game's come out, it's gone down even a little bit more. The user score, so like the fan score, if you're talking on like Rotten Tomatoes, is an 8.5. So yeah, I mean, I think pretty much everybody agrees Metroid Prime 4 is a pretty good game. I know online I've not really heard nearly as much about it as I was expecting to. Like, it's not, like, just like Silksong, I don't think it's been quite as explosive as I was expecting it to be, as I think most people were expecting it to be. It could just be that these two games were hyped up so much that now that they come out, it seems, not as big a deal. Like, I don't know, that could be what it is. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe, indeed, things are pretty big, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right, so GameStop did their Trade Anything Day, and they do mean anything when they say trade anything. This was on December 6th, and basically you could trade any item, and they would give you $5 for it. And I think that's the main idea here, was to raise awareness for their trade-in program. The variety of things that people brought in were interesting, for sure. So somebody brought in a taxidermied bobcat to a GameStop location. Somebody brought in a goose. Somebody brought in a speed limit sign. A complete Friends season on VHS tapes. A bowling ball. And non-alcoholic cider for the employees. I guess they also received a lot of canned goods and stuff to donate to food shelters and stuff. But yeah, I saw this article, and the picture was the taxidermied bobcat on the desk at a GameStop store, and I was like, what the heck? Like, I was just like, I have to figure this out. Somebody also donated like a copy of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, what about, it's very interesting. Obviously, when you do something like that, you expect crazy, weird, wacko things. I'm sure they expected things like that. I imagine some things were more surprising than they expected, but still, pretty surprising nonetheless. All right, so we talked weeks ago now about EA getting acquired in a $55 billion deal by the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. Obviously, that happened. It's going to be a while before it goes through. There's a lot of different things that need to be approved, and so, there's a lot of stuff, and that probably won't be finalized for quite a long time. Apparently, Netflix at some point tried to also buy EA, but obviously they must have got outbidded or at least declined or something. Netflix also, pretty famously, this is outside of video games as well, but a lot of people know that they offered $82 billion to buy Warner Brothers. Or rather, I think it's Warner Brothers Discover, technically. But they're the ones that hold a lot of the different media things. So that obviously could be huge if Netflix bought such a large company, and it could also have effects on the video game industry, right? Obviously, Warner Brothers holds the licenses to lots of different video games. But yesterday, I think it was yesterday, maybe it was 2 days ago now, Paramount launched a $108 billion plan for a hostile takeover of Warner Brothers in response to Netflix proposed acquisition. So I don't know all the details with this. I'm not a business guy. I'm not a marketing guy. I don't know. But it does seem like there's a pretty good chance to hear that somebody ends up with Warner Brothers, whether it's, Paramount or whether they can come to an agreement and Netflix can still do their acquisition. Whatever it is, good chance Warner Brothers gets bought here. And like I said, we just had EA get bought. Now Warner Brothers is getting bought. There's a lot of consolidation going on right now. A lot of it's from Saudi Arabia, but others of it is from other companies, here in the U.S. Like, there's a lot of consolidation going on. A lot of entertainment groups getting merged together or being acquired or all these different things. Is that good? Is that bad? It depends on the situation, for sure, right? I mean, obviously, it can definitely be bad. It can, I guess, in a way, sometimes be good, but it just depends on the situation, I suppose. But it is worrying also in a sense. We had also after the Netflix deal, there were a lot of legal bodies that were trying to not let it pass. Back when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard, I know in a lot of different countries there were different anti-monopoly protection organizations, government branches and stuff that tried to shut down the acquisition and not let it go through. Obviously, it did eventually go through, and now they're fully merged together and everything. But EA is seeming like it's going to have a lot of those same problems, and now if Warner Brothers does get bought, it could have a lot of those same problems as well. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of legal battle, a lot of discourse around that for the next probably year or so, I would guess. I mean, it's probably going to take a long time. But anyway, I think it's interesting. I'm definitely going to be following this, at least to some degree, because I'm kind of curious where Warner Brothers ends up. If it does end up getting bought, that could have major ramifications on a lot of things, besides just video games. Obviously, there are a lot of things that are going to be far more affected by a Warner Brothers acquisition than video games. Video games is obviously one of the things that'll be affected. Alright, so apparently in Forknife, it was revealed that Tomb Raider was going to be announced at the Game Awards. So supposedly there's going to be something related to Tomb Raider. I don't know if they're new remakes, if it's a new game altogether, like what exactly is going to happen, but supposedly there's supposed to be a new Tomb Raider thing. That's cool. I would definitely take a trilogy of the original ones remade if it came to Switch 2. I think that would be pretty interesting to play those games through. But we'll see. I mean, it's definitely interesting. I guess the main reason I wanted to bring this up, first of all, obviously it's big news at the Game Awards. We know one of the things that's going to be announced. But it's also another instance with Forknife announcing things in the game. The amount of things that keep getting announced within Forknife, I feel like I'm going to have to start playing Forknife just to be up to date with gaming news. It's crazy. All the time I start hearing about things that were originally announced in Forknife. I'm like, can we do this anywhere else? Like, goodness gracious. We lose E3 and now they just want to do freaking press conferences in Forknife? Like, that's ridiculous. Anyways, it's not a big deal, but I'm a little bitter about it, if I'm being honest. Alright, Katsuhiro Harada. He was the director of the Tekken series for all of its history. He was obviously at Bandai Namco, and he's leaving. He's no longer going to be at Bandai Namco. Bandai Namco issued a statement that said, "To our fans, rest assured that we are fully committed to future development and content plans for Tekken 8. We will continue to take community feedback on the game and its content to heart to ensure that we uphold the vision and spirit built by Harada." So there you go. This is obviously huge, right? We're on the 8th Tekken game, the 8th mainline Tekken game, and the dude's leaving. The guy that did it is leaving. Apparently he left to go become a DJ. So that's interesting, I suppose. So he he was the director of a highly successful video game series. He's leaving now. He's going to be a DJ. So good for him. I don't know, man. I read that, I was like, seriously, like is that really a thing that's happening? Like. Like, imagine that. Imagine, Miyamoto announced tomorrow. He's like, yeah, I'll leave Nintendo. I'm gonna go be a DJ. Or I'm gonna go be a baker, like, it's just, like, so random, out of nowhere. But hey, I mean, if Miyamoto wants to go open a bakery, then, I don't know. I feel like I'd have to go to Japan just to visit the bakery, the Miyamoto bakery. I'd be very curious. Anyways, so there you go. So, the Tekken guy's gone. I don't have much to say about it. I've never played Tekken, but obviously, even if you don't play Tekken, that's definitely a major thing, right? Tekken is a huge fighting game series. Obviously, I would say Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter probably have wider reach. Obviously, Smash Brothers, if you want to count that as a fighting game as well, and it's kind of its own thing, but obviously it's huge as well. And there's lots of other fighting games like Fatal Fury and stuff, but Tekken is obviously a big one as well. And so I don't know if this is going to mean that the Tekken series will end. Probably not. I'm sure Bandai Namco still wants some money. So I would think at some point they would put out another Tekken game. But I'm sure things will be very different without the main guy there, right? So that it's obviously going to be some big changes. It's probably going to mean some bad things for Tekken fans. But I guess we'll have to see. I say we. I'm not one of the Tekken fans. So I'll have to hear about it from the Tekken fans that have to see. All right, so I guess that's going to be it for news for today. I'm sorry if that felt a little rushed. I'm really trying to get this out. I would like to get it out tonight, but I'm guessing it's going to be tomorrow. I guess with that, though, we'll move over to games I've been playing. So it's a little weird, not having a musical break in between segments, so we're going to have to try to get used to that. I know. It's like, why do I even separate things out anymore, right? Because there's not even a need for two different segments. I don't know. It's not really a big deal, but it definitely bothers me in a way, right? So, anyways. All right, games I've been playing. So I'm going to talk about a few things. I'll start off with two things, and then I'll talk about Yakuza. And Yakuza will probably be the bulk of my, I say conversation, but really I'm not sure if it counts as a conversation if I'm just talking to myself into a microphone. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is Gunman Clive. Gunman Clive, I was playing it on PC. The game originally came out in 2012. By, I really don't know how to say this, Horberg Productions. And the game originally was a Wii U and 3DS game. I think it was actually a 3DS game first, and then it ended up on the Wii U as well. Obviously, both of those online stores no longer exist, and I don't believe the game ever got any sort of physical release. So now the only way to play this game, even though it was never originally on there, is through Steam. Or I don't know, maybe on Epic Games and stuff too, but, generally speaking, on the PC. So it's a little weird having, something like that be a thing. This is the same developer for those who might have played Mechtermination Force. It's that same developer. It's also the developer behind Super Punch Patrol and Onion Assault. Those are two things. All those games were on Switch originally. But yeah, Gunman Clive was their original game. They had a second Gunman Clive as well. So there's two of those, and then there's Mechtermination Force, and those are probably their most popular things. I would say Super Punch Patrol is pretty popular too. I'm not super familiar with Onion Assault. I've heard of it. I had no idea it was by the same people though until I just looked it up. So I don't even know what it was really. But yeah, these guys, I know I've heard Gunman Clive, and that's kind of, obviously the roots, their roots. I've heard Gunman Clive described as a Old West Mega Man game, and I would have to say that that's probably pretty accurate. The only Mega Man game I've actually played all the way through is Wily's Revenge on the Game Boy, and I really didn't like it very much. I've not played any of the original 6 from the NES, but I do have them now. I have the Legacy Collection. So I'll probably get to some of those next year is my plan. I might actually even get to one of them before the end of the year, but either way, it'll count for next year's list because the year's done. Like, my list is done. Like, it's not done, like, the video's not done, but it's finalized. Nothing else is going to be added to the list, even if I beat it in 5 minutes, So, I might play some of those for next year, even if I play them at the end of this year, but I've not played them yet. So anyways, Gunman Clive is supposedly a lot like a Mega Man game. I've played a bit of Mega Man 1, even a bit of Mega Man 2, but I've never actually, played them all the way through or even made a solid effort to beat them. And yeah, I'm inclined to agree, even with my limited knowledge and experience with Mega Man. Gunman Clive does feel a lot like one of those games. I think it is a little bit easier, though. Gunman Clive, there's no lives or anything. It's very simplistic. I guess Mega Man is too. But yeah, it's side-scrolling, left to right, and you are a cowboy with a gun. It's pretty simple. It's a pistol, and that's all you do is you shoot. It's literally, you can jump, you can shoot. That's about it. You can walk. And those are your entire. That's like your entire functionality as a character. There are power-ups you can pick up, and then your gun can do more things. It can like spray shot, like 3 wide. You can hit more things. And then if you get another upgrade, you can get these like large missiles, which interestingly enough, in some situations are actually worse than the spray shot, even though they're the next upgrade. Because the missiles are obviously very good for like boss fights and stuff, but for general enemies, it usually doesn't make a difference. Like most of them die in 1 hit or 2 hits or something, regardless of whether or not you're using missiles. So oftentimes the spray shot is actually better. But anyways, I digress. I played like the first half of Gunman Clive. I was going to try to beat the thing for the end of the year, but I got a little stuck, to be honest. The game is not particularly difficult. I did find like there were 1 or 2 levels that I was getting really stuck on. I just beat the first 2 worlds out of 4, so I played pretty much exactly half of the game. And it was great, you play through the levels. I think the levels are well designed. It feels very clever. They're not puzzly or anything like that, but it feels like, I guess in a way, it does feel a lot like an old NES or Game Boy game. Like you'll be walking along and all of a sudden an enemy will pop out and you won't know that they were coming and you'll be like, well, that's kind of unfair. But it's okay because unlike in Mega Man, you have a few hits, right? You can get hit like, I guess actually, no, that's also true in Mega Man, so never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. You can actually get hit multiple times in Mega Man as well. So anyways, but it's not like Mario, where you die in 1 or 2 hits. You die, it takes a few hits, quite a few hits, to kill you. When you do die, you have to restart at the start of the level, which sounds like it might get a little annoying, but the good news is all the levels in the game, at least that I've seen, maybe the last one is long, but every other one is very short. Especially for, like, the boss fights, right? It's pretty seamless. You die, you spawn in, and 5 seconds later, you're fighting the boss again. Like, it's not a problem, right? So, is it a little bit annoying sometimes to die? Yeah, I guess, but that's kind of part of the game, right? So, it never really sucks to die. Sometimes it can be a little bit annoying, but it's not a huge deal. I actually was having a lot of fun with Gunman Clive, but I got to the 3rd world after the 2nd boss, and I think it's the 1st level, maybe it's the 2nd level. But I got stuck pretty quickly because they introduced a new mechanic. And it's a mushroom. There are these mushrooms on the ground. And if you've played this game, you probably know where I'm going with this. But basically, it adds, an extra layer of depth. So now you'll be, like, there's this one section where, I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? There's a wall. You can't jump high enough to get over it. So you have to jump on the mushroom, and then you can get extra height by jumping on the mushroom, which you can get you on top of the wall, and then you can make the jump. And that was fine. But I've got to say, the controls for the mushroom are really bad. Like, the timing that you have to get, it's very precise. And so it is incredibly difficult to accurately execute. That was quite the word salad right there. Incredibly difficult to accurately execute one of these mushroom jumps. And so I found myself, like, it took me like a solid couple of minutes just bouncing around on the mushroom, trying to get the boost. Every now and then, like, I would get the boost, and then I wouldn't be ready because I'd been jumping around for 15 seconds and I hadn't got the boost. And so now that I have the boost, I lose, I jump up and I miss the platform because I wasn't ready. And it was a little frustrating trying to make this jump with the mushroom. But I did finally get past it, and I'm like, all right, cool, we're good. So I walk, a little further in the level, and all of a sudden, there's a pit. And there's one platform way down in the pit, and on it is a mushroom. And so basically, you have to jump off the edge, land on the mushroom, and then get back up onto the platform because you can boost off the mushroom. I could not do this. I tried. I spent literally like 25 minutes on this game. It's supposed to be an hour-long game. I spent 25 minutes all just on this one section of this one level, on one jump. I looked it up, I did Reddit posts, I did YouTube videos, I tried and tried and tried. I tried in place, trying to practice the timing for the mushroom. I tried putting it in context, trying to make the jump over and over and over again. I couldn't do it. I literally just could not do it. I cannot make this jump on the mushroom. And it's not that I'm just bad, it's like literally the mechanics for the mushroom suck. I'm like, well, how do they mess up so bad? This game was so good, and then they messed up the timing on the mushroom jump so bad that it's honestly, it's laughable. It's crazy. I'm like, how did they even manage to do this? So obviously, after spending like 25 minutes trying to get through this level, all just because of this one freaking mushroom jump, I was pretty frustrated, and I put the game down because I couldn't beat it, right? And so at some point, I'm going to go back, and hopefully I can get through the mushroom thing. It might take me another freaking hour, but eventually I think I can probably do it. Hopefully, there aren't any more mushrooms after that. But if there are any more mushrooms after that, then I'm probably just not, I'm just going to DNF on the game, because I literally cannot do the timing on the mushrooms. Rarely if I had games that I'm like this bad at, like, it's not even me being bad at it, honestly, that are just this hard to play. I don't know how many people have beat this game, because I cannot for the life of me make that jump. Alright, the second thing I don't have a whole lot to say about. That game is Mario Kart DS. So I did start Mario Kart DS months ago. I played the first, like, Grand Prix or whatever. I think pretty much just one Grand Prix, and then I got away from it. I did last weekend, or maybe actually 2 weekends ago, I did start it back up. I don't think I talked about it last show. But yeah, I did start playing Mario Kart DS again, just the Grand Prix. And so I've been playing a little bit of that here and there whenever I'm on the go and I'm not at the house. So I don't know when I'm going to beat this thing, because it's going to depend on how much I'm out of the house in the coming weeks. But basically, I just wanted to give an update on Mario Kart DS. I have beaten all of the Grand Prix on 50cc, all of them on 100cc, and now, or actually, no, all but the last one on 100cc. So there's 8, because there's 4 of new tracks and 4 of retro tracks. Mario Kart DS was the first game in the Mario Kart series to have retro tracks. So I've done everything on 50cc, gotten the gold medal. On 100cc, I've done 7 out of the 8 Grand Prix. I just need the last one, gold. And then I can move on to 150cc. And then I'll have beaten all the CCs in Mario Kart DS. Mario Kart DS is unique, though, in the fact that there is a mission mode. So basically, there are a few worlds, and in each world, there are a handful of levels where you have to do different tasks. So for some of the levels, you might have to collect a bunch of coins. You might have to do a race or do like a time trial and get a specific time. You might have to race a boss, right? Or you might have to defeat a boss. Like there's some boss fights. Like there's one with the ice bully from Mario 64 DS, right? There's all sorts of things like that. It's kind of Diddy Kong Racing-esque, if anybody's ever played that, or even kind of Crash Team Racing-esque. So that's Mario Kart DS. I am going to do the mission mode as well, but I've got to finish the Grand Prix first. So far, though, I think Mario Kart DS controls a lot better than any other Mario Kart game before it, probably. I think it's great. I think it controls great. The tracks are great, right? I have very few complaints about it, other than the fact that it's on the DS, and I don't really love playing the DS or holding the DS. It's not really my favorite thing. I'm playing it on the new 2DS XL, but even still, I don't like the way the DSs or 3DSs feel in my hands anymore. Obviously, I used to when I was very little. But I think once you get to the age of like 12, your hands kind of outgrow a DS or a 3DS. I don't quite understand how there are so many adults that continue to play on the DS and 3DS. And for those people, more power to you. But I cannot do it. If I play on a DS or a 3DS for long periods, not even really long periods, like 15, 20 minutes sometimes, it cramps up my hands, like, really bad. And I do not have particularly large hands. Like, I don't think it's like that's my problem. I think I literally, like, I just think the thing's too small. Like it was clearly designed with like children's hands in mind. And my hands, while they're not huge, they're bigger than that. And so I think the 3DS and the DS are a little bit too small. It could also be that I'm so conditioned to the Switch 2, right? Or rather the Switch 1 and Switch 2, either one. And they're so much larger, or even the Wii U gamepad, and that's so much larger. That could be part of it. I don't know. Who knows? But either way, I think the 3DS is too small. So it's actually very difficult for me to play things, to play something like Mario Kart, anything action based, right? If I was playing an RPG, I think I'd be fine, right? Especially if it was like a turn based RPG. If I was playing a Zelda game, I would probably be okay for the most part, because there's a lot of just walking around or clicking through text boxes and stuff. If I was playing Animal Crossing, I would be fine, right? But it's as soon as you start playing Mario Kart or like a side-scrolling beat 'em up or something like that, where the 3DS can be a bit of a problem because of its small, very small buttons and its small D-pad. It's not very good D-pad. The circle pad I don't think is very effective just in general. And it's a very small device, and obviously that's the idea. It's meant to be compact. I think it's a little too compact, personally. So I'm not a huge fan of playing on the 3DS, if you couldn't tell by the way I'm acting. But anyways, that doesn't mean the game's not good, though. I think the game is very good. So I'm trying to look past my grievances with the DS when looking at a game like Mario Kart DS, but it is difficult. And yeah, I don't really intend to play this game at all at home. So I'm gonna beat it, somewhere on the go. So I'll play it when I'm on the go. That's it. Like I really, if I'm at home, I'm not playing this game. So when I beat it is gonna be largely dictated on when I'm next out of the house on a long drive. So it might not be till Christmas break. Could be after that. Could be before that. Who knows? But yeah, this is part of my great quest to beat all of the Mario Kart games, starting kind of at the beginning and mostly going in order. I am going to skip Double Dash because that's the only one that I don't either have or have on Switch Online. Double Dash is the only Mario Kart game that I can't play and haven't played at all. And so I'm going to play every other game, and then if they eventually, which I assume they will, drop Mario Kart Double Dash on the Switch Online service, I'll play it there. That's my plan. And if for whatever reason they never do, I'll eventually just buy it on GameCube. I intend to eventually anyways, so that's the plan. But I'm hoping that I can just play it on Switch Online at some point, hopefully in the next year. I would think hopefully next year they drop it at some point, and that would be awesome. Alright, so that is everything besides Yakuza. I guess now is a great time to get started talking about Yakuza. I don't want to delay things any further. The first section of this conversation about Yakuza Kiwami is going to be spoiler-free. So I'm going to talk somewhat about the mechanics. I'm going to try not to spoil anything about the mechanics either. But I'm going to talk about the mechanics, about my general thoughts on, everything besides the story. I mean, I might talk about my thoughts about the story, but I'm not going to, give away major spoilers or anything for the story. I'll be very careful not to say anything like that. And then I'll close out the show, and I'll dismiss all the people that, want to skip spoilers for Kiwami, and then we'll talk a little bit about spoilers. Not for long. I don't have a ton to say, but I do just want to kind of recap the story and share my thoughts on how some things went down. All right, so starting out, Yakuza Kiwami. I beat the game on December 5th. It took me 27 hours. Now, if you go on how long to beat Yakuza Kiwami, they say it's like an 18-hour game, 18 and a half, something like that. So 27, obviously, much larger number than 18. Like, it's, I spent quite a bit more time on this game than I was, in quotes, supposed to. There are a few reasons for that. Well, no, there's one reason for that, actually. There's one reason for that. I was, honestly, at one point, I was considering 100%ing this game. I did so many side quests. I did so many extra things I didn't have to do in the game. The main way that the leveling system works, right? Unlike in Yakuza 0, so I should clarify, everything I talk about in regards to this game will be compared to Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, because that's the only other Yakuza game I've played. So I've played these two Yakuza games. I'm playing through the series in chronological order. So my next one is Yakuza Kiwami 2. So in Director's Cut, or I should say in Yakuza 0, because this was in the original as well, I did actually play like an hour of the original version on PS4, like in January, and then Director's Cut got announced for Switch 2, and I stopped playing Yakuza 0, and then when the Switch 2 came out, actually like a month later, I got Director's Cut and played it. So that's kind of my experience with Yakuza. So anyways, so in Director's Cut, or in Yakuza 0, the skill tree was gold, or not gold, but yen based. So your main currency, because you're in Japan, is yen, and that's used for everything. So in Director's Cut, in Yakuza 0, sorry, it's used at all the stores for everything, for all your healing items, for all your story-based items that you need to buy things for side quests, all of that stuff. It's always going to be yen, but your skill tree is also going to be yen. So you use the same stuff that you use to level up your abilities that you do for buying things, and you do for like different mini games and stuff you can spend money on. There is a game in Kiwami where you basically, not Kiwami, Yakuza 0, where you bought up property in the city, and that used money. So it was actually kind of difficult to discipline yourself into upgrading your abilities in Yakuza 0, because I wanted to always spend my money for other things. I never wanted to be out of money, but if I spent my money to upgrade my abilities, I would then be out of money. In Yakuza Kiwami, your ability tree and your currency are separate. You level up still through a skill tree, although now it's like 4 different wheels you use for your skill tree, each of them having a different focus. And you now level up abilities with levels that you get from experience points that you get by defeating enemies and completing side quests. So, obviously, you can get a bunch of XP, and then you can level up your abilities that way. And I liked that system a lot more, like way more. I thought it was far more intuitive. And so I kind of made it a mission to try to finish up all the skill trees, or at least all the ones you can spend XP on. And I did. I finished all 3 skill trees that you can spend XP on. The 4th skill tree in the game, I should actually clarify, here's what the skill trees do. So there's one skill tree that focuses on your heat actions. So in Yakuza, the Yakuza series, or at least in the older ones, I don't know about the newer ones, in the older ones, if you knock an enemy to the ground, you can use like finishing moves on them. There's other things you can do with this stuff too, but you use heat for the finishing moves. And you can use heat for other things as well. But basically, you generate heat by getting successful dodges, by hitting people, by these kinds of things. You can also use like different, items to raise your heat. But the one of the skill trees is based on different moves when you have heat, like how are your moves affected when you have however much heat. Another skill tree is based on like your fortitude, like your strength and your health is mostly what's on that one. There's a couple other things, but that's mostly what it is strength upgrades and health upgrades. And then the last one is for abilities. And so there's 4 main battle styles in Yakuza Kiwami. There's the Brawler style, there's the Rush style, which does a little bit less damage than the Brawler style, but you can move a lot faster too and do more dodges and stuff. So that's basically what it's built on, and that's the one I use most of the time. Then there's the Beast style, which hits a lot harder than the Brawler style, but you move very slow, like incredibly slow, and you're very vulnerable to getting knocked over. But you also don't take as much damage either. And then the 4th style is the Dragon style. And it's part of the narrative. This isn't a big spoiler or anything. But it's part of the narrative for whatever reason. I'm not going to say for what reason, but basically, throughout the game, you have to focus on leveling up abilities for this specific style, if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, play the game. But anyways, so throughout the entire game, there's things you have to do besides spend experience to unlock these abilities. And so That skill tree I did not finish. I finished the other 3 skill trees. The problem with finishing that 4th skill tree is that there's actually things that are locked behind the end of the game. And so I didn't really feel like beating the game and then going back to finish up the skill trees, especially since I don't have a whole lot of time. Like, I'm running out of time here. I need to make this end of year video, so I don't really have the time to be messing around after the game. But also, just in general, for me, most of the time, once I roll credits on something, I'm probably done most of the time. Like, that's not like a rule for sure, but that's generally my thoughts and feelings. So I wasn't like super excited about the idea of coming back after I'd beaten the game and spending another 10 hours to unlock these abilities that were not going to help me in the game. My main motivation for unlocking these abilities is that I wanted to see what the final style, battle style of the game was like, so I could use it in the end of the game and I could like succeed with it. The problem was, though, is that that battle style is actually not that good, right? I found that the rush style was actually way better, and that the brawler style was also very good. I didn't like the beast style. I didn't think it was very useful. And then the dragon style, I think, is literally the worst style in the game. It might be better than the beast, but it's nowhere near as good as the rush or the brawler. And it's kind of a shame that I put so much of my time and my focus into unlocking abilities for this style that ended up not being any good. And I guess I should clarify, like, what the problem is with this style. I think the main thing is that it does maybe a little bit more damage than the brawler style per hit, but it's slower. I don't think it's not quite as slow as, like, the beast style, but it's very slow, and it feels very stiff as well. Like, you're very, stuck into your attack. Like, you can, like, be doing a combo, right? And, like, you can't, like, stop midway. Like, in a rush combo, at any point, you can pull back away, as long as you're fully upgraded. You can pull away from your attack. And you can usually do that with a brawler style, too. With beast and with dragon style, it feels like you're just kind of trapped in your combo once you've started it. And so you can be hit by a big attack, and it makes you very vulnerable and open to being counterattacked. And that I don't like. And also, I feel like it's very easy to get knocked on the ground as a dragon style. You can't evade. There's no easy way to get away from things. Like, just in general, I don't like the way that the combat style controls. I like it better than the beast, but I don't like it as much as brawler or nearly as much as rush. So yeah, it kind of sucks. And even online, the general opinion I've seen is that it's not really that good. Most people have their favorite between... Usually either Rush or Brawler are people's favorites. Those are really the 2 most viable battle styles. Dragon's not very viable, and Beast is horribly not viable. Like, it's really bad. For common enemies, you can use it, but for, like, a boss or, like, yeah, no, Beast is just not the way to go. I guess, as far as the combat goes, I felt like it was pretty similar to how it was in Yakuza 0, and that's great. There was nothing wrong with the combat in Yakuza 0. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the Yakuza series is the combat and the systems related to all that. I loved it. I loved it in Yakuza 0, and I still loved it here in Kiwami. And the biggest change that I noticed was that bosses can now heal. Like, mid-fight, they can get down on, like, not on their knees, but they can kind of, like, bend over, and they can heal. I found out about halfway through the game that when they do that, they flash a certain color. I always assumed that was something related to them. It's not. The color they flash is actually the type of, or the battle style you have to use to counter their healing. So if you switch to that battle style and you use a heat action, then they'll stop healing and you get an opportunity to damage them. So beforehand, I was just like smashing on them as much as possible while they were healing, trying to counteract the healing. And of course, they would get some healing off. But I found out, maybe not halfway, but pretty close to halfway through, that was not the way to go about that. I don't feel like there was any sort of tutorialization surrounding that stuff. So that was maybe a little irritating, but that's not the end of the world. And at least by the end of the game, I figured that out, and I was able to, without any issues, really, to execute that heal stop, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. But anyways, so the combat was still great. The story was good. I would say, director's cut, it felt like it was maybe a little bit more consistent. Like Kiwami had like a lot of really high moments. I want to say it had a low moments per se, but it felt like there was a lot of like extra stuff in there, right? Too. Um, Yakuza 0, like it felt like it was better paced potentially. Like there were reveals throughout the entire thing. Not that they were all, some of them were a little predictable, but that's okay. Like my point is it was paced well. Yakuza Kiwami, maybe not so much, right? It was kind of loaded in a few different areas, right? Right at the beginning, there was a lot of story stuff, which makes sense. But then it was a big gap where you didn't really do anything too important. And then once again, you did some important stuff. And then once again, you didn't do anything important until right at the end. Like, it felt like the stakes were pretty low for most of the game. I don't know, maybe that was just me. But generally speaking, I think Director's Cut was a bit more consistent as a story, but I think I actually did prefer Yakuza Kiwami's story just based on its moment-to-moment beats. And based on one of the main mechanics of the game that I don't think I should really spoil. So I'm not going to talk about that. But yeah, based on that as well. It's surrounding somebody that you fight a lot, if that is a bit of a clue to anybody who's played the game. So anyways, yeah, Kiwami, I would say, that it was a very natural progression. It's all built in the same Dragon engine, Director's Cut or Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami, and I assume that, they're pretty much all built in that engine nowadays. So the general UI, the map, the save system, all that stuff, it's pretty much identical in the games, or at least in the ones I've played. Yeah, honestly, I had all these things I was going to say about Kiwami, but honestly, it's now that I'm thinking about it, there's not really as much to say as I was originally thinking. Like, just in general, it was a great game. I loved the combat. I loved the story. There were a couple good changes from Director's Cut, like the skill tree, or not really the tree, but the skill wheel. That was definitely a good change. I liked the side quests better. I think usually the side quests were better. I really liked also there were these they were sparkly objects on the ground. They were hidden locker keys. So there was this one place in the map where you could go open up a bunch of basically little storage lockers, and you could get an item out of them. Usually the item wasn't too useful. It was usually just something you could sell at the pawn shop and make some extra money. But you could find these keys hidden all over the city, and it kind of encouraged you to explore down weird windy alleys and stuff to try to find some of these things, or to go in the back of restaurants and things to do stuff. Oh, that was another thing I really liked too. There were these different completion tasks that were part of the game that at one point I was trying to complete almost all of. Some of them are related to battle. So for each of the styles, you can get a character point, they're called, for defeating 50 enemies with a style, 100 enemies with a style, and 200 enemies with a style. I did that for every style except for the dragon style. You can also get them just for defeating an amount of enemies, right? I think you can get up to 500 or 1,000 or something like that. Actually, might be more than that. I'm not sure. You can get points for defeating however many of a specific type of enemy. You can get points for breaking objects in battle. For interfering with conflicts. Most of the enemies you fight on the streets in the game, they'll just be standing in a crowd, and you can bump into them to initiate a fight, or if you're kind of standing still or not moving too fast in one spot for long enough, they'll start to chase you. That's how you initiate most of the fights in the game, but there are a few as well where they'll be harassing somebody on the street, and you've got to step in if you want the fight. And those ones, you don't have to fight. There's nothing saying you have to, but you can get the character points if you fight enough of those battles as well. In those same character point categories, besides just battling, though, there were some other things you would have to do as well. One of them that I really liked was at all of the different restaurants in town, of which there were many, you would have to eat every item on the menu, which I think is potentially annoying, but I also found it kind of fun. If every time I would do a fight, and I would be down a little bit of health, rather than spending my potions, I would be encouraged to find the closest restaurant that I had not completed the menu at, and go eat something at the restaurant. Later on in the game, too, by spending those character points, you can upgrade some things that are more conveniences rather than actual, changing of mechanics. There's one that allows you to sprint for longer. So rather than just, your regular jogging pace, you can like sprint. And which you can always do, but basically you can do it for a very limited amount of time usually, and eventually you run out of energy completely, and you like have to kind of bend over, and you're like out of energy, right? With these upgrades, you can eventually get to the point where you never run out of energy sprinting, and it comes in stages. So you do one upgrade, and now you can sprint a little bit longer, and you can recover a little bit quicker, and it's scaled. So obviously, by the last upgrade, now you don't ever have to recover. And you can sprint forever. And so that was definitely one that I wanted to get as soon as possible. And another one that I really liked as well was basically you don't have to worry about being too full. So basically at some of the restaurants, like I said, you had to try to complete the menu at all the different restaurants. For the food items, once you ate enough of them, and your health was full, you could no longer eat more. But if you got this upgrade, you could eat as many things on the menu as you wanted. So, like, you could go to a restaurant that you hadn't been to before, and you could order all 20 things on the menu at once and complete the menu for that restaurant immediately. Now, there were also drinks, like alcoholic drinks, at these restaurants. And those you could only have like 2 or 3 at a time, and then they would kick you out and be like, "Oh, you're too drunk or whatever, right? You can't have any more." And so it was kind of difficult to complete the catalog at like bars and things because of that, for that reason. But at any restaurants and stuff, is quite easy after getting that upgrade to kind of go through and finish up all the ones I could. So I ended up doing most of the different battle objectives and most of the different non-battle objectives, but I didn't do them all or anything, but I did quite a few of them. I did engage with a lot of them. Same goes for those collectible lockers and stuff. Like I did end up getting like the majority of them. There might have been a few that I missed. I wasn't gonna like look up a guide to find the last few or whatever. I just found whatever ones I could and called it a day. And I did a lot of side quests. Like almost every side quest that I saw along my playthrough, I did. At the very end, in the last couple of hours, I did decline a couple of them if they seemed like they were going to be a little bit lengthy, because I was really trying to finish the game for this podcast episode, number one. Number two, I had, kind of felt like I had done enough side quests at that point. And number three, I was worried about making this end of the year video, and I didn't want to like, not be able to make it because I pushed back the completion of the game too long. So those were a few reasons. But yeah, generally speaking, I did way more side quests than I needed to. I did way more objectives than I needed to. And I'm happy I did because it was fun. Almost every moment of the game was fun. All right. I don't have as much to talk about as I thought I did. I probably should have like written down some more extensive notes. So I could have remembered some of these things a little bit better. So we'll call this a day for the episode, and then I will talk about spoilers for just a few minutes in just a second. So if you don't care about getting spoiled on Kiwami, or if you've played Kiwami, stick around for a few minutes. Otherwise, thanks everyone for listening, and I'll see you on my live stream for the Game Awards, and otherwise next week. Thanks, guys. All right, so if you're sticking around, that means you don't care about being spoiled on Yakuza Kiwami. All right, this is your final warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So Kiwami, right? The game basically starts out. There's maybe a very brief time jump from the end of Yakuza 0, but it's not anything too substantial. There's a new guy that's kind of your underling, right? Your main guy. You've got your own Yakuza family. I started this game like over a month ago, so if I get some small details wrong, I'm sorry. But basically, you are known as the dragon of the Dojima family. That's hence why you have the dragon style later in the game. And you're very powerful, very feared. A lot of respect on your name. All these things. Well, then, the sworn brother or whatever from the last game of Kiryu. I was saying you as in like, but I should say Kiryu. That's the name of the character. Kiryu's like sworn brother Nishikiyama, who is in Yakuza 0, kills the patriarch Dojima. and the events leading up to that are a whole thing related to the two of them. They're like sister. Now they're not actually brothers and sisters. They were all just in the same orphanage growing up, and but basically for reasons which I will not get into, Nishikiyama kills Dojima. Kiryu urges him to leave and takes the blame for the death with the police. The police realize that it's not him, but they've got to put somebody in jail, so they put him in jail. He's in jail for 10 years. Not a whole lot happens, right? So there's a big time jump in the game. There is one little jail brawl that you get into, but otherwise that's it. And you get out of jail 10 years later, a bit worn out, a bit old, and kind of, out of style, right? And not knowing what's happening either. There's a lot of changes in the city. There's a whole new tower built. There's a lot of things like that. So basically, the premise of the game, there's a few things that happen. First of all, you're met by Majima, who is the other main character in Yakuza 0. And he basically, he wants to fight because he wants to face the legendary Dragon of Dojima, right? And basically, you guys fight. He realizes how out of practice you are, and now he decides that to regain your skills, you need to fight him a lot. So for the entire game, the whole time you're playing the game, Majima will be around the city in different places to attack you. By defeating Majima, you can unlock new abilities in the dragon style, in theory, increasing your power and getting you closer to where you were before you went into jail. So that's basically the main premise around Majima. And throughout the game, Majima is one of the greatest parts of the entire game, of the entire story, of the entire experience. I absolutely loved, right up until the very end, the incorporation of Majima. You would be walking along, and then all of a sudden, there's Majima. You've got to stop what you're doing. You've got to fight him. So the battles at the beginning don't really take too long. There's a few different styles that you can fight with Majima. There's one where he has a baseball bat. There's one where he does a bunch of breakdancing things. And I don't think I lost this. Yeah, I didn't lose a single battle to Majima in the entire game. Either the ones in the story or the ones outside of the story. I think generally speaking, Kiwami is a much easier game than Yakuza 0. I think I also did have more experience with it, with Yakuza by that point, but I think it's an easier game as well than Yakuza 0. It is also true that I was over-leveled, usually, for most of the fights, but even at the beginning of the game, before I was over-leveled, I found the fights to be, honestly, almost obnoxiously easy. Later on in the game, they got to be leveled out, where it was still pretty easy, but it wasn't completely ridiculous. The only fight I actually died on was the final fight against Nishikiyama. So there's so many things, or so many different places where you have to fight Majima over the course of the game. Obviously, the most standard of them are just on the street, right? You'll just see him on the street, and he'll run over to you, and you have to fight him. Other times, he'll hide behind trash cans and jump you. Sometimes you'll be fighting another enemy, and then he'll join into the fight, and you have to fight him as well. One of my favorites is you go to this club, like this host cabaret club. So basically you go, and the idea is it's a bar, but you're accompanied by a hostess, right? And instead of a hostess, you get Goromi Majima, and it's like Majima all, dressed up as a hostess, and he just wanted to fight you all along. You go to practice baseball at the batting cages, and you have to face Majima. You go to the bowling alley, and you have to play a bowling round against Majima. All of these things, just him constantly wanting to fight you. That's like his entire goal in life. There's one where he hires a bunch of people from his Shimano family, and they all dress up as zombies and play, act as zombies. And he tricks you into thinking he's been zombified, and you have to fight him and through his whole clique, and then you find out that he wasn't actually a zombie. And the funny thing is all of these crazy, ridiculous things that happen with Majima. He becomes a taxi driver one time, and he takes you to a faraway location to fight, and all these different things. They're all completely ridiculous, all crazy, and they're all just so fun. I absolutely loved almost every fight with Majima, up until the very end of the game. At the very end of the game, the ones that you fought on the street, with Majima, they got to be just a little bit annoying by the end of the game, because I felt like they were showing up even more often, and they were much longer fights as well. So I would just be going along, and all of a sudden I'd get interrupted by Majima, and now it'd be like a 5-minute fight. Like, they got to be obnoxiously long, some of them. And none of them were really that hard, but I was just there just pounding on this guy forever and ever and ever. So right up until the very end of the game, it was fun. At the very end of the game, it kind of sucked, to be honest. And I found myself trying to run away from him when he was chasing me, because I just did not want to fight him at the very end. I think a lot of it, too, is because I was trying to finish the game super quickly. Right at the last few hours, I kind of rushed through to try to beat it for the podcast. So I think that was probably part of it, for sure. But if you're playing this game super casually, I think Majima is a super awesome addition. If you're somebody without a lot of patience, then, maybe you won't love it quite as much. But yeah, just in general, I absolutely loved the inclusion of Majima. I thought it was one of the funniest moments, one of the greatest things in the game. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved pretty much every moment about fighting Majima. The general story, too. So I talked about Majima. Also, to unlock the stuff on that final skill wheel with the dragon style, there is an old martial arts sensei that you can train with. The problem is, though, you only get a few lessons with him to get abilities before the end of the game, because then the rest of them you have to do after the game ends, because there's really not a whole lot of lessons with him to begin with. So half of them are locked in the post game. So most of the abilities you get through Majima. There's a couple that you get through the sensei, but most of them you do get through Majima. I guess generally speaking in the story, just to recap just a couple of things. Basically, you are looking for Yumi, which is you and Nishiyama's sister or whatever, in quotes, from the orphanage, and she's run away, right? And in looking for her, you're led to this other girl who looks a lot like her, and you find out is her sister, that's named Mizuki. And in looking for Mizuki, you accidentally find Mizuki's daughter, who's 8 years old or 10 years old or something. And so now you've got to care for this 10-year-old and hide her places so she's not being hunted down, because you find out other Yakuza groups are looking for this Mizuki because she stole 10 billion yen from the Tojo clan, which is the main, Yakuza family in, the whole area that you're in Japan. So she stole all this money. You trying to protect her daughter from all the different groups. The Yakuza, they use different gangs and stuff to try to take the girl. They do get her a couple of times, and you have to get her back, and it's a whole thing. So there's a lot of drama surrounding all that stuff, and there's a lot of death. A lot of people die from Yakuza 0. Every time there was a cutscene, I'm like, oh boy, who's dying now? Just so many people dying. And right at the end of the game, too, a couple, key important people, Shimano and Kazuma, that were both crucial to the story, both in this game and in Yakuza 0, they're both dead. I'm like, man, we're not gonna have anybody left here. For the next game, there's a bunch more games here. We need more characters, people. But seriously, I feel like there were more characters they killed off than they introduced. Or some of them they introduced and also killed off in the same breath. So, anyways. I'm not going to go into any more further detail on the story, I guess. Oh, I guess I will say you find out that Mizuki is actually Yumi. They're the same person. Mizuki was a fake identity. And so basically it all culminates at the end with another guy who is a corrupt politician that was originally had run-ins with the Yakuza. He's trying to get the 10 billion yen. He tracks it down to a tower. You track it down to the same tower. It was a tower that was built while you were in prison. Basically, you have to go and fight this guy, and while you're there, Nishiyama, who has betrayed you and is also looking for this $10 billion, he comes in, you have to fight him, and then at the end of the day, oh, look at that, he's sorry, all this stuff. He sacrifices himself to defeat the guy who was trying to steal the 10 billion yen, and he blows up in an explosion. So, at the end of the story, Kiryu and Haruka, the young girl, and Yumi, they're all safe, but Nishiyama's dead, Shimano's dead, Kazuma's dead, all these people are dead that were crucial to the story beforehand. So like I said, a lot of death. I think generally speaking, the story was great. It was maybe at times a little chaotic, right? And I think that's kind of part of the fun, right? Yeah, it was very busy. There was a lot going on with the story. And yeah, the story, the gameplay, all of these things, they make me want to play Yakuza Kiwami 2 so much. And I have it, and I'm all ready to play it. And I'm like, honestly, I could finish this episode and just go play it right now. But I gotta wait. I've got to finish some other things first. I've got to kind of put a little bit of a gap here because if I go and rush through that game, first of all, I won't finish my end of year video because I'll get too into it. Number one. Number two, I'll have to kind of stop playing it for a while when I go out of town after Christmas. And number three, I'll have to wait longer until Yakuza Kiwami 3 comes out, and that's supposed to be coming out in February. So I'll definitely be picking that up on launch day, honestly. I'll pick it up on launch day, as long as I can find it at the store. If not, it might have to be a few days later, whenever I can get up to get it at another store that's far away. So anyways, I'm very excited to play Kiwami 2, and eventually to play Kiwami 3 next year. I really hope, and I really play... I really play. I really pray. Sega, Ryoga, Gotoku, they're the Yakuza people. Guys, please keep porting all the Yakuza games to Switch 2. Port every single one. I want every single one. I want every single spin-off. I want everything. Put them all on the Switch 2. I don't care if they all come out and they're all like $60 to $70. Doesn't matter. I will buy every single freaking one of them. Put them all out over the course of the Switch 2 lifespan. Even over the course of the next couple of years. I will play every single one. I promise. I will buy them all. Please put them out. Please put them out. I want them all. I want them all. I want them all. I want them all on the Switch 2. Yeah, I really want these games. So I hope they keep coming out. I think they will, but we'll see. Hopefully they sell well. Anyways, that's gonna be all from me, folks. I don't think I need to really go too much more into. Oh, you know, there's one thing I forgot to mention actually. At the end of the game, after the after the credits, right? There's the post-credit scene. Kiryu, after the death of Sarah, who was the chairman of the Tojo clan, and then Kazuma, who was the next chairman of the Kojo clan. After his death, Kiryu was named 5th chairman of the Tojo clan, and then he resigned 10 minutes later. And so a new guy that was reintroduced in this story, whose name I can't remember, he was put in charge of the Tojo clan. So it was just another situation. I found it funny. I was like, wow, look at that, Kiryu not wanting that responsibility. He would much rather be like the grunt, right? Out there on the streets doing the work. He does not want to be sitting back. Anyways, I found that funny. But yes, that's going to be it for me, folks. I bet most people probably didn't stick around for the spoilers, but maybe they did. I don't know. If you did, thanks for watching. Please watch the my live stream for the Game Awards tomorrow. That'll be exciting. It'll be fun. It'll be awesome. It'll be hype. We'll be hanging out. It'll be awesome. I've already said that 3 times. It'll be awesome. So check it out. It'll be awesome. And on top of that, I'll see you next week. I'll see you in my top 50 video, which is supposedly only 10 days away. I really need to get on making that, though, because it's not going to be 10 days away if I don't finish it up. So need to kind of get on that. But that's going to be it. I think this episode is actually going to come out on Tuesday night. So if you're seeing this on Tuesday night, then hello. Otherwise, it'll be Wednesday. And that's fine as well. It's not a huge deal. So I'm sorry the episode was late. That's going to be it for me. I will see you guys next week on the 16th. 16th? Yeah, 16th, as long as it's not late. Thanks again, and I'll see you all then. And goodbye. Game Awards in 2 days. How exciting. I'm hyped. Bananza's going to win. Bananza for Game of the Year. Let's go!